Sound. Hi, everybody. It's Nancy Reyes with For Your Canine.
And Joanne Stoike with For Better For Worse.
In the dark, she's just getting home from a trial, so we'll be able to see her lovely face here in a minute. Today we're going to be talking and introducing you to the sport of flyball, and we have Jayne McQuillan to kind of give us that information. So, any questions you might have, let us know you're there. And again, flyball is just another sport you can play with your dogs that you might think about or think about doing it. So, Jayne, how did you get into flyball?
Well, I actually started out with a dog that needed a lot of training. She didn't like dogs or people, which was a bit of a limitation. So I started doing just some basic obedience training, and then she was really good at it. And they're like, this dog's really active, try agility. And the agility people were like, hey, maybe flyball, because she's a mixed breed. And at the time, it was hard to find any agility that would take mixed breeds. I think maybe UKC was the only one.
Yes.
Dating myself a little bit there.
Yes.
And then I happened to find, I was fostering Australian Shepherds at the time. And one of my adopters was like, hey, your dog looks active and jumpy. You should come to one of our practices. So we went and checked it out. And my dog was kind of a natural at jumping on things. And not so much the people and dog things, but she was really good at learning new skills. And it was really cool to be brought into a group of people that wanted your dog to succeed, because it's a team sport. So in order to play, you have to have a team of people to play with. So it's a little bit different than, agility or obedience that way, in that you basically have to have other people to be able to play. And so we all get invested in each other's dogs' success.
Oh, so how many people or handler dog teams are on a flyball team?
It can range. When you're actually competing, you can put on a roster 6 dogs, but only 4 run at a time. So potentially you see some very small teams that are like 3 to 4 people, and then they may borrow like a box loader, and then just run their dogs to like my team Skid Marks, which is huge. We have about 20 people.
Wow.
And we're approaching like 50 dogs. So clearly there's more dogs than people, because if you have one dog, you need another dog. And
sure. Sure.
So at any given tournament, we will put like 3 to 6 teams of dogs out from our club. So they'll each be in a group of.
You're frozen, Jayne.
See me.
Okay, gotcha.
Still there?
Yep, I gotcha.
Still there?
Yep.
So we will fill out those lineups with dogs that we know work well together, and then we send in basically a seed time for those lineups so that they're racing in a division with dogs of similar speed or teams of similar speed. So you're not racing a very, very fast team against a very, very slow team. You want each division to be fairly competitive. So we just put teams together and then help each other out to perform the sport.
Yeah. So for those people who aren't really familiar with flyball, what exactly is the game that you play? Because and actually, I might try to pull up a video of what a flyball looks like, because I think most people have an idea, but if you can explain like what that looks like.
Right. So it's a team sport. So you have those 4 dogs that are going to run in any given heat. Usually the format is you're trying to win the best 3 of 5 heats or like 4 of 4 heats. And so the basic course is that your dog goes over the start finish line, jumps 4 hurdles that are about 10 foot apart, and then they hit this contraption at the end, which we call a box. So the Flyball box is actually, it has a pedal, and the dog, when they push the pedal with their paws, it shoots a ball out at them. So they're doing it now so fast that you're kind of missing the flying ball aspect of it, because they're turning so fast on the Flyball boxes that they're grabbing it as they turn. Then they have to bring that ball over the start-finish line, over all the jumps, not drop the ball, and the next dog is running just straight at them. And they hopefully would meet at the start-finish line, and then the next dog goes. So you want all 4 dogs to complete that sequence basically cleanly, going over 4 jumps, getting a ball, coming back, and not having the dog that's oncoming go
right
before the dog finishes ahead of them.
So I'm just looking to see if there's a Flyball, and there are some. So I will pull that up later when Joanne comes back. So let me ask you, that's got to be a pretty challenging setup for.
It's pretty crazy. And then, of course, they're racing basically about 15 feet away from another set of 4 dogs. So
yeah,
it's kind of like doggy drag racing mixed with
right
shuttle hurdle relay and maybe bowling, because we all wear funny shirts and stuff like that. But it's a very highly aroused, distracting environment. And the dogs really have to know the sequence and know how to perform it well, and not get distracted. It's one of the few sports where you can have pretty much anything to reward your dog every single time in the ring. So we'll use food or toys, a tug, maybe just another tennis ball, if they're really into tennis balls, to reward them. So they're very keen to get back to their owner to get those rewards. So they're encouraged to run as fast as possible and have fun and run, hopefully on their side of the ring and not on the other side of the ring,
right.
preferably. Occasionally you'll see dogs bobble or whatever, or maybe they're not quite ready, but it's pretty uncommon to have a lot of dogs crossing. So if that tells you how focused these dogs are on the job, like I'd put them up against any obedience person's recall.
Oh yeah, I bet.
It's pretty stunning to watch.
Right.
And
well, because they have to have, I mean, they're working in drive and they're pretty aroused.
They are very aroused.
Yeah. To be able to have that good of a recall to come back is hard. I got that.
Yeah. And certainly I've dealt with a lot over the years, people's misconception that Flyball dogs are out of control and it's so crazy and yeah, it's loud. And the dogs are moving very fast. Most of them are very aroused, but it's also extremely controlled. We wouldn't be putting our dogs out there running very fast times, running full speed at another dog if they didn't absolutely know the skills and know how to work in drive, not just perform the behavior.
Right.
Yeah, I took a few lessons with Jayne. Gosh, I don't even know how long ago that was. Way back in the day. And I found it really funny, right? Because you go to some Flyball lessons. What do you expect that you'll be doing, right? Is chasing the ball or whatever. So Jayne, what are your what is the primary exercise you're teaching a lot of?
Recall. Also some more recall.
Oh wow.
So that's the main skill we were working on, and not just come to me, but come to me as fast as possible. And then we start layering in distractions of other dogs, other people, because you have teammates and they're running their dog and they're also running and they also have toys and food and whatever for their dogs. So your dog has to really have their recall down to come to you.
Yeah, I found it super, super interesting. I mean, when she talks about this, because the first bits of kind of what we did was like, here, find your dog's favorite thing. Now run away with it and have them chase you and get it. Mm-hmm. And then, as the weeks went on, it was like, okay, now we're going to walk a dog over here. Now we're going to play with the dog over here. Now we're going to run a dog with you. Now we're going to, right. So I really liked the kind of step up approach. Like, Let's see how they handle something rather than throw them in the water and see what happens, right?
I can tell you what's going to happen. It won't be pretty.
Yeah, exactly. Right? Exactly.
And definitely all those incremental steps are really helpful, because if they are distracted at one level, then you can back up and make sure they're proofed at a lower level of distraction and then move forward again.
Yeah, I feel like Jayne really changed my mind about Flyball, because I will tell you from the things that I had heard, right? Again, out of control dogs, right? The only reason that they're staying is because they're ball crazy, and you have to have a ball crazy dog to play Flyball. And the biggest one, I think, is that, these dogs always, they hit that box so hard they get injured.
Right.
So can you talk just a little bit about just the safety protocols and what you do to minimize, injuries to dogs?
Right. I take it super seriously on our club. I can only really speak to my club and our philosophy, but we want dogs retiring from the sport at 10, 12 years old. We don't want them going out with injuries. Certainly things happen, and not every dog's structure is ideal. Sure. But for me, a big part of the sport is making sure it's safe for this dog that I love. This is my pet. I don't want them injured. Same thing with all my teammates' dogs. They're all our pets.
Yeah, right.
We love all of our teammates' dogs, and we don't want any of them injured. So, a big thing is fitness. We work proprioception. We work on them learning the skills safely. And then I've borrowed from lots of other things. So what do you do in agility? You ask for collection to do tight turns. We ask for collection to do tight turns. We're asking them to slow down, which people just, I talk about this and they're like, your dog's not slowing down. And I can actually give you the video and show you where they're starting to slow down to make these very fast turns. Our box has multiple layers of matting to make it softer. We try to make sure that the dogs aren't just smashing their face in, that they're actually coming in controlled. And bracing themselves as they turn. We call it a swimmer's turn. Mm-hmm. So kind of like the swimmers come up and they're able to push off the wall and go backwards faster than if they just like swam up and stopped and then tried to turn around. When we're playing tug with them or they're running full speed back to us to get their toy, we give them the toy. We don't let them grab a tug and then get a hard neck jerk. Because our dogs are moving, some of them like 25 miles per hour on the course. So that's a lot of speed to to catch a dog on a tug and not see neck injuries or something like that. If we are always monitoring their turns, is something different? Is there an injury? We're not going to let them perform if we think that something's wrong, because it's a very skilled, high-speed behavior to perform. Like if anything's wrong, it's going to affect that. So we'd rather sit them and figure out what's wrong than just keep trying to run them. We also really, because the course is set, the start finish line is 6 feet from the first jump. The jumps are 10 feet apart, and then there's 15 feet from the box to the last jump. We actually teach them sort of like how to control their striding to slow down and how to be consistent as they're doing that. So you don't see dogs just flailing along, sliding into the box, because those are good ways to get injured. So we really take that pretty seriously. You'll also see like a lot of the Flyball dogs will have basically vet wrap on their carpal pads. Some may have it on their feet. Some of them are doing that for friction burns, and it does provide a lot of protection. We mostly wrap the stopper pads because the dogs are going to slow down using their stopper pads. And that also gives them sort of like a tennis shoe, right? It's sort of like a little extra grip on the mats. So we do that and make sure that they are safe and controlled when they're performing, even if it's at top speeds. And then, just keeping them in condition, not letting them be armchair warriors and come out for the weekend and then be really tired, because obviously if they're tired, they're going to perform well. They're more likely to get injured, just like with, any other sport.
Right. Right. So I have a quick short video. It's a demo from the agility. So I will share it so people can see what that looks like. And it's a pretty.
Yeah,
it's from the AKC, but
it looks like it's on. Oh, it is on Matt's. Yay!
Yeah. So you see how the turn, and they're kind of.
Ooh, ouch.
So yeah, those.
Yeah,
those
that's what I mean. You could tell it's a demo.
Things. Those I'd be even more particular with our turns for our dogs than they are being.
Than that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Because these are just kind of. Yeah, I was trying to see if you guys had any video, but you don't. So.
Yeah, and while you're kind of looking at some of the small dogs here, Sarah asked, are there like ball size differences, like balls for small dogs, big dogs?
Yes, we have squishy balls. We have regular tennis balls, small tennis balls. I think we're using about 6 different balls on our club right now, just depending on what the dog prefers. Sometimes some of our dogs that really, 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 really like tennis balls, we will switch them to a ball that is less desirable to sort of help them be less obsessed with the tennis ball that they're going to get out of the box. And that's one of the misconceptions too, is that people think they have to love tennis balls. And a lot of our dogs don't care that much about tennis balls. And we have to train it as a, stationary retrieve of an object. And in fact, I prefer the dogs that are not obsessed with balls because if you think about it, if they're just running down to get the ball, full speed, and the ball is the reward, there's not much incentive to really do that good turn and come flying back to me in the backfield with another reward. So
okay, yeah, that makes total sense.
So some of our biggest challenges are dogs that are really, really into balls. I've had one that he loved balls. He would hump loose balls. He would chase loose balls in the backfield. It was really nice. It was super awesome and not embarrassing at all. And I had to work so hard with him to make it about the ball and me as the reward, not just go get the ball and then poof, hey, why bother to come back or come back slower? So we really work a lot on that with the dogs that are super into balls, because you just don't want them thinking half of the course is
the reward.
Is it.
So. Yeah. So I think Janice asked, how long does it take to train? Depends. I know it's probably very dog dependent. And Tim had a question too. Large breed dogs and flyball health concern, different levels.
Well, one of the cool things is that you generally always want a smaller dog on your team because they set the height for your jumps. And so the little dogs give your big dogs an advantage. And a lot of our dogs, we have some that are like 24 inches tall. We have a German Shepherd Lab mix on our team that is, she's got to be like close to 28 inches tall. She's huge.
Wow. That's about as tall as my Shepherd.
Yeah, she's large. She's very large. She's kind of a small pony. I've seen Great Danes doing the sport down to, you'll see Chihuahuas, Yorkies. I had a little dog that was 7 pounds and 10 inches tall, and she did the sport. So it's really kind of open to any dog as long as they're not like dog aggressive.
Mm-hmm.
Because obviously dogs running everywhere. It's a highly aroused situation. You need to have any sort of dog issues under control. But there's really no limitations. I've seen 3-legged dogs, and basically as long as they can perform safely, the organizations are both all for it. You'll see occasionally deaf dogs. And I know the one organization lets you do a hand signal if you're the box loader to sort of, since you can't call to that dog, they're like, hey, look, the ball's here. So it's actually a really supportive community. Mixed breeds have always been welcome. And right now they pretty much dominate the sport, you know, as far as the speedy dogs, but we have English setters, Brittany, a bunch of border collies, some weird Papillon mixes, like whatever it is, if you're dedicated and you want to do it, there's room for you in Flyball.
So what are the different organizations?
So there's UFly, which is like the United Flyball League International or something like that.
Okay.
And they, it's kind of like the difference between AKC agility and USDA agility. There's just different rules. It's kind of basically the same sport, but just different rules in each organization. And then the North American Flyball Association is the other organization. The big differences are one measures for your jump height using the ulna of the dog, and the other one uses a withers height measurement. And then there's just sort of small particular rules between the two. My club plays in both of the organizations, and so you got to make sure you know which one you're in and how the rules differ. But overall, it's the same sport, just different venue. So.
So you would say that the UFly is more like USDA and agility for those of you who do it?
Not particular. Well, so typically, like in UFly, your dogs are going to jump a little bit lower versus like USDA. I always felt like you jumped higher in USDAA. They both have national championships. One has some classes like singles and pairs. So you can run, and like we have the fastest English setter in the world on our team, according to UFly. So there's just different categories of play in UFly than in NAFA. NAFA has a multi-breed class, an open class where basically anybody from any team could throw dogs together and race. And there's no jump height requirement in it. There's just a base height for that. And then there's both leagues sort of have a regular division that is you've got to have your height dogs, you've got to follow all the rules, and the 4 dogs have to come back clean with all their balls and without any early passes or anything like that, or an early start, because we do have like a light tree, like drag racing. So you can't cross the start line before the light turns green.
So I think, you know, when you don't do a sport, sometimes you don't realize how prominent it is, right? Are you guys out competing like every weekend? How many times a month? I mean,
COVID shut down a lot of things last year. And so anything you could get to was like, awesome. So we went to like 4 or 5 tournaments in 2020, which was compared to most of the world was a lot. We just happened to be in a pocket of states that don't have limitations on group size. So we were able to do some competitions. And then this year, more things are rolling along. We typically will do about 12 competitions a year. Right now, there's a lot of tournaments in Amana, Iowa, which is about 25 minutes from my house. And usually during the summer months, that's really prominent. And since COVID sort of changed hotels and Airbnbs, a lot of people are camping, and there's camping at Amana. So there's a lot more people going to those tournaments than we normally see. So that's kind of cool. Typically not everybody goes to every tournament on our club. You know, we all have families and lives and jobs and stuff. But there's sort of definitely a core group of us that we're like, oh, there's a tournament, let's go. But we do try not to do back-to-back weekends if we can help it. We're really looking for, space for the time. There's time between tournaments for the dogs to recover. Some of us do other sports too. So sometimes you're balancing going to this event and that event. So, you could probably, if you really want to travel, you could probably go all over the United States and Canada and find tournaments, in a normal year every weekend if you really wanted to, but it gets harder when it's a team sport because you've got to get more people all together to do them. So it's harder, I think, than like agility. I could just decide on my own, go do it whenever I felt like. If I don't want to show up,
Right.
if it's bad weather, whatever, I'll just stay home. And for flyball, there's a little bit more of a premium to get there with your team and race because they're depending on you and you're depending on them.
Right. Yeah, it's a little more pressure than like nose work or agility.
Yeah.
Where you're right. You can, if you miss, it's on you, and that's it. But if you're on a team, yeah, you really have to try to make it. So let me ask you, with the dogs going at each other and all that, is that a really, for some dog, even the dogs that like other dogs, right? So what are some of the challenges besides like dogs that do like each other that they decide
well,
you're gonna run and play, or if you just happen to be on a team with a dog that maybe they're usually like most dogs, but maybe for whatever reason they don't like that one dog?
Yeah. Well, there's definitely dogs that don't like each other. We're always trying to come up with dogs that mesh well together to do a lineup. And we'll practice that. But to me, the pass is one of the most amazing things of the sport. Like they are literally running full speed at each other. There's inches to spare as they hit the start finish line. And we train that very, very carefully, very incrementally. And then we're going to practice to make sure that the dogs know those passes as well as the humans, so that we're comfortable sending our dog into the next dog because we've seen that dog perform. We know. So basically, if I'm releasing my little tiny dog Crucial, I know that he passes Josie when Josie sets her feet down after the second jump when she's returning. So that's a consistent mark for me. She performs that consistently. So I know I can send my dog from whatever distance into that pass and have it be close, but not too close. And we generally, if two dogs were not gelling well together, we would know that from our practices. It might be something where we would back up their training and say, okay, you guys just need to run past each other like 20 feet away from each other. And then slowly bring that in closer where they're comfortable with that. And we'll often do that with, we don't worry about the whole sequence. We'll just worry about that passing behavior. So we will have, this dog here, but their reward will be right past that other dog. So we're not asking them to do the whole behavior when we're training that. They learn that incrementally and can get comfortable with it. And we like to race dogs together if they're good together and keep them together because that pass becomes so consistent. The handlers can trust it, but the dogs can also trust it. They're used to that dog coming at them. And that's a real benefit, I think, all around for the humans and the dogs, that they're all comfortable with that. And if we see something that's not working, we're going to change it. So it's not uncommon for us to have to swap out a dog like, oh, they're not liking that pass for some reason. We'd rather swap in a dog or put them in a different position passing another dog than risk them turning or being slow. We typically, because of all the recall training we do, they typically don't want to go play with each other. We discourage them from like having a party in the backfield with the other dogs. It should be about us, the human, that you're partying with, not the other dogs. And that's one of the things like when I'm teaching a class or something and I know like, okay, this dog goes to the dog park all the time and I can tell because their big draw is the other dogs, not necessarily their owner. Because that's what they've learned is really fun, right? They go to the dog park, they run around with other dogs. They see other dogs, that's what they're for, right? So we actually have a lot of dogs on our team that really don't like other dogs. We have some dogs who don't like each other at all, and they can pass each other because this is such a well-trained, well-rewarded behavior. They're always focusing either on go get the ball or get that ball back to your human and you get your fun reward. which could be cookies or whatever, or a toy, and that play. So they have a huge incentive to not mess with the other dogs.
Oh, okay. That makes total sense. Yeah, and then they're not allowed to. Yeah, that makes total. Yeah, because I wondered about that. Like, how do you know? But it's. I mean, you do know by reading the dog, but yeah.
Right. And when we're practicing, we will set up a practice pass and go, okay, did that work? Did it not work? Do we need to change something about that? Because the humans are also moving, sometimes dogs are sensitive to a particular human coming at them too. So you may have to change the picture for them that way. It just depends. But if we've practiced it, it's not working, we're not going to throw them into a tournament and ask them to do that pass too. We're going to change it. We're going to find some other way to work that dog in.
Right.
So
one dog is starting, one dog is finishing, so they don't have passes on either end. So sometimes you're just working with a dog that is okay with the dog coming at them when they're returning to their handler. Some dogs are much better passing into a dog. So you try to pay attention to those things.
So you had made a comment earlier in the conversation about, I know this dog is when the other dog comes off the second jump and the paws hit the ground and that, right? So it's funny. I've seen a lot of your posts seem to be in slow motion video.
Yeah.
So can you talk a little bit about, are you really studying paw placement and all of that? And yeah.
I'm a little bit obsessive. Yes. It's paid off. I don't know. One of the things is just the experience. I've been doing this sport for 20 years. And when we see something where a dog is off, like, well, why? Why is that off? Is it a repeatable thing? Is it something that we can help the dog understand better? So I'm looking at video all the time. Certainly our box turns, we want them to be very consistent for the dog's safety and also for the people passing that dog, because if they bobble at the box and we're ready to send that next dog, we now have an inconsistency in the performance that we have to deal with. So we're going to hold our pass, or maybe not send the dog at all if something really went wrong. But we do a lot of slow motion video, especially when the dogs are learning their turn. Over the years, like we used to train just like, oh, they just have to get on the box and get the ball. And for me now, it's you have to get on the box and power off of that box to come back. And we want them turning their body and preparing to turn a certain way. So in the learning process, I really want to know what they're doing and how we can help them perform better. And then as far as like the passing, we're running very fast dogs together. And anymore, we can't tell. Used to be you'd have somebody at the line and they'd be like, oh, that was a 3-foot pass, because one dog's finishing and the other dog's nose is back here. And you could say, oh, well, this is 3 feet apart. They're now moving so fast, I can't tell. So we will have somebody watching the line with a camera, which everybody has in their pocket nowadays. Mm-hmm. And they can actually tell you, okay, that was a 3-foot pass. So you can then adjust your dog, or you can say, oh, I was late doing that pass. Ideally, I want the dogs to be about 2 feet apart in that pass, so you have a little bit of cushion. But that's how precise we're looking at stuff. Obviously, the closer we can get that pass to what we call a perfect pass, which would be dogs meeting nose to nose at the start line, the less time we lose in the overall race. So we will also look at, sometimes dogs, it's kind of like in agility, if you saw a dog taking off too soon for jumps and hitting the jumps, we would want to know why. What part of that is wrong for this dog that they're hitting a jump? How can we change that? How can we help the dog understand the criteria for doing the jumps or doing the box or whatever? So it's a very long-winded explanation for, we watch a lot of video.
because a lot of looks, because a lot of people think you're right, that the dog just has to be ball crazy and they just have to want to go get it
Right.
and all these things. But you know, just like anything, everything that looks so simple isn't always very simple. And it's, there's a lot of nuances and things that are different and more complicated. Because, you know, everybody thought that of nose work. Well, how, you know, it's not that
Right.
hard. And then as you get more into it, they're like, oh, it kind of is a little bit more complicated than.
Yeah. And certainly, I'm obviously very into the sport. There's other people that are like, yeah, they just go get the ball, they come back, it's great. And they don't worry so much about the passes, but we're a pretty competitive team with a lot of competitive people. So even if we're running our slowest dogs, we want to be competitive in that division. We want them to be doing their best. So we're going to support that, whether you've got a 6-second dog or a 3.5-second dog, which is the great thing about our club, is just that it doesn't really matter. We just want the best that dog can do.
It's the Olympians of Flyball.
Sure.
So just to take a quick second and let you just brag a little bit about skid marks. I know, Jayne rolls her eyes, right? Can you talk a little bit about what your team has accomplished over the last few years?
It's been a really wild ride. We used to be just sort of a medium speed team, and then we got some faster dogs, and all of a sudden, a lot of that competitive spirit that we always had with all of our dogs, that we're not the fastest in the world, it just helped overall. We were already paying attention to those things, and as the dogs got faster, it was a huge benefit to them. We basically in 2019, before everything shut down, we had gone to the Purina Incredible Dog Challenge, and we got 3rd there out of 4. I don't know. It's a little bit weird because it's Purina Incredible Dog Challenge, and there's different rules entirely, and we're on grass versus mats. But the reason we got that invite was the year before we had gotten 2nd in both UFly and NAFA's championships for the year. So we were like, whoa, this is crazy. And then other stuff happens. And then in 2019, we got 1st at NAFA's Can-Am, which is a huge tournament and their championship. And it's kind of like you have to be perfect. You got to be really fast and really perfect
Wow.
to make it through to the finals. And then in the finals, you've got to, really put it out there. And then we got 2nd at the UFly championships again, which was incredible. And we've had just our top times have been just dropping. And so we this year have put up the 2nd fastest time ever run in Flyball at all, which was mind blowing. You see it come up on the clock and you're just like, wow, these are just our pets. Like, we love it. And they're amazing athletes. And we're trying to bring everything about that athlete and the humans together. And it takes such precision and such timing that I don't feel like you can go out there and say, we're going to just beat our record every time. I think if you go out that way, you're going to be like disappointed a lot because there's so much that can go wrong.
Sure.
And there's so many things in play. The dog can have a little bit of an error. The humans can have a little bit of an error. And there you go. They dropped their ball. That was your nice, beautiful world record time.
Yeah.
So you really have to have a lot of humility because you're working with dogs and
Right.
and a group of people. So, errors will happen, mistakes will happen, and it's fine. Just do your best.
So, I had another question. Oh my God, I lost it.
Had a long day.
Yeah. Oh my God, it was a really good one too. I hate when that happens.
Was it about mental management?
No.
Yeah, we've had to step that up too, because
Oh yeah.
at this point, 4 years ago, nobody knew who we were. We raced, nobody paid attention. At this point, when we're racing, there's crowds around. And then when you go into the championships, there's not only the excitement of just the dogs racing and them being all over, over aroused and excited and ready to go, but there's crowds of people lining the entire lane, all cheering. Like the adrenaline level when you're in there. We actually have somebody who just has water bottles for us because your mouth is parched and you're just so overwhelmed, right? And then you're asking your dog to perform and you've got to remember all this stuff. And so we really found we had to okay, step it up. What's the goal here? Do we need to visualize stuff? And certainly when I go in the ring, I'm looking at whatever I'm doing, whether I'm starting or passing another dog, I'm doing visualization of what I need to be looking at so I can focus on just that and not worry about the crowds or the other team that we're racing and the noises they're making. And it can be a bit much, but definitely mental management helps. Dogs don't seem to care.
No, the dogs are, they're luckily for them, for us, they don't need mental management. They just need us to keep our end of the.
Keep it together, human.
Yeah, that's right. They just need us to keep it together and not fall apart. So, what are some of the injuries that may happen? Even oh, I know. Now I remember my question. So, what do you do in your off time when you're not competing to keep your dogs in good physical health for Flyball? Do you just have them running? Do you do strengthening? I mean, what do you do to keep them in physical shape?
Obviously watching their diet, making sure they're not putting a lot of extra weight or that they're not underweight. A lot of our dogs are whippet mixes who are like, food, who needs it? I live on air.
I know, that's so true.
And then you're trying to, you want them to be running at peak performance. Like you might want some calories, dog. So you do have to watch that a fair amount.
Yeah.
And then certainly you want them in shape because there's a lot of turning and they're doing a fair amount of shoulder stopping. You want a strong shoulder. We've certainly done a lot of stuff with the proprioception and then working on continuing to work that kind of stuff to make sure their shoulders and their neck and everything is very supple. Mm-hmm. I'm a big proponent of walking the dogs. Walk them. Take them on a walk. I don't like treadmills. I have 6 dogs. I'd have so much time on treadmills. So I'm lucky I have a property. And so I will hike with them off leash in our fenced area. A lot of our teammates and I have a scooter, like a push scooter. Mm-hmm. And so we'll go out on some local trails and just go at a nice natural trot for those dogs. I typically don't do a lot where they're running full speed.
Right.
That we save that for practice a little bit. Some people will do a lot of long distance recalls and I don't typically do a lot of that. I like natural motion for the dogs. We do swimming. And certainly, a lot of us follow Bobby Lyons and some of the fitness gurus.
Yes. Yeah.
To keep working, definitely in our off season, which is more the winter, where you really want to keep them in shape, and it's harder to get outside because we live in Iowa, and it's always snowy or icy or cold or whatever.
Yeah.
So you have to, kind of switch gears and do indoor stuff. Some of us will go to. There's an indoor water place in the Quad Cities where Joanne is. That we'll go use that during the winter just to give the dogs some good swimming. We also do other sports. So sometimes you look at, I'm doing disc dog stuff. Some people do dock diving. So you've got to kind of balance out some of those exercise needs and the physical demands on their bodies to make sure they can do both of those sports or multiple sports. It kind of depends on the person, what they can fit into their regimen for their day. I'm lucky enough that my dogs like to scooter along. Other people may go with a friend and do some recalls to keep them in shape. it just kind of depends.
Hmm.
on,
Okay.
what
So
the
yeah,
person-
because so it's really important to keep them in pretty physical
yeah,
condition, especially if you're going to go once a month or whatever to a
right. Right.
And so, what are some of the injuries you've seen?
Certainly,
One of the more common ones, I guess.
well, certainly you'll see dogs that maybe burn a pad when they're
Oh.
racing, during racing. That seldom happens for us. We really watch, certainly in wet conditions, like if it's raining and then you're coming in, you want to make sure their pads are dried off, so they're not kind of sticky as they're running on the surface and getting more friction. You will see some neck and shoulder injuries. We don't have a whole lot of injuries on our team. We're pretty careful, and you'll see a few collisions that are sort of a fluke thing at a tournament, but that's pretty much out of the norm versus like, oh, it happens at every tournament, right? It's pretty rare that you'll see a collision between two dogs. Gosh, I don't know. There's certainly, dogs that will have blown knees. I don't know if you can, do you say that's conditioning, genetics at this point?
Yeah. With the
But you
knee,
seldom see something like that happening at the tournament. It's more something you might see gradually over time that the dog's having an issue.
Right.
We have maybe some dogs with arthritis in their front feet because of those impacts.
Sure.
I've retired 3 dogs now at 12, and it's one of the things, like, I'm x-raying stuff, like, let's look at their feet, let's look at their back, see if there's any arthritis, and we haven't found any. Now, I'm also lucky with those dogs, right? They had good structure, but those are, long-term arthritis, but you just don't see a lot of dogs that like are injured. Like certainly in agility, I felt like there was always dogs rehabbing, lots of iliopsoas stuff.
Yes.
And because it's sort of a set course, you just don't have a lot of that twisting and turning all the time in different directions. So I think that helps. But overall, like, the injury rate just seems far, far lower in flyball than in agility, even, like some of the dock diving, lure coursing, where you see a lot of toe injuries. We don't see much of that.
Yeah, because that's one of the things way back when you did see a fair amount of wrist injuries, but lately, I don't hear of it so much. And the knee, or I mean, that, like you said, it could go either way, and it's kind of like, is it going to be, you know what I mean? What is it, right? So yeah.
I don't know that I can, attribute that directly to flyball, but certainly there is some wear and tear there. And definitely,
but it's agility as well, and even some dogs that don't do any of the sports that have that could be a genetic component. So yeah, I totally, it's hard to say, oh yeah, that caused it or that didn't.
Right. Yeah. I mean, and certainly there is wear and tear on their bodies over time. So you have to be cognizant of that and make sure, as dogs get older on our team, they move to a part-time position. We aren't asking them to do as much, but they still love it. They're still active. Even if they're a little bit slower, let them play. Like, if they're not doing anything to injure themselves.
Yeah. Let them,
what's the harm? They're staying active and getting, this game is essentially play. So they get to play with their owner. And some of our retired dogs will come help us train young dogs and green dogs. So they're still involved, even if they're retired.
So how long would you say if you start your dog, and first of all, how old should they be to start competing, and when do you stop them?
So one organization says 12 months, the other says 15 months for when they can start competing.
Okay.
We, as soon as the dog comes to us, right now I basically get a puppy. The very first thing I do is work on auto check-ins and recall, baby recall, playing with me, and working a lot of those focus skills. So that's day one, whether it's a puppy or a dog that we're just bringing in, that's an adult dog. We're going to work those same foundation skills of recall and focus and have fun with your owner.
Right.
and get heavily rewarded. So they have that history of, rewards with the owner. Ideally, in my perfect world, it would take about 12 months. That seldom happens. You need everything to go well. There to be no plateaus, no issues that come up for them to come out. And at that point, like when say it was a puppy, if they're at about 12 or 15 months and we're going to their first tournament, we have them in a warm-up spot. We're not expecting them to actually run. We will probably be doing recalls with them, letting them get used to the environment and being in the actual arena or the actual lanes where you're competing. And there's strange dogs over there. So we're not really expecting them to totally be able to do the full thing at that young age. But we will try to get them that experience if we can. And then we've had dogs that have taken 3 years to train. Kind of depends on the dedication of the owner, how much time they've had, or if there's been any issues. We have some dogs that are working through the distraction issue takes a very long time. Because we have high standards for our box, sometimes that will delay their training because we don't want them doing an unsafe box turn because we know that will cause some sort of injury.
Right.
You can't smash into something 30 times and then, think it's just going to be fine. So we really want them doing a careful, controlled turn. And if there's something wrong, we're going to delay that dog and make sure it's right before they get the opportunity to go out and really ingrain bad behavior, right? Just like if you out to any sport, you don't want to keep rehearsing bad performance. You want to make sure that they can do it correctly, give them some slack, but
right. Well, no, and it's also true. Yeah, but it's also true. And this is, I just had this conversation I mentioned it at a workshop I did. Whatever behavior you teach in the beginning, good or bad or whatever, once a dog really understands it, what happens is they do tend to, under pressure, go back to that original behavior. So if you didn't learn it properly the first time, under pressure, the dog will go back to, same like us, we'll go back to that the way they originally learned it. So
yeah. And I certainly have no problem going.
Yeah, so we
have to go back. Let's work that foundation skill
because
over and over again.
Right, because it's worth the time spent. Because if you don't, under pressure, the dog will perform what you first taught, the way you first taught him. So it's true for humans too. Yeah, I would agree with that, Jillian.
Yeah, and definitely we want them, as a young dog, we go in, we race multiple times a day. There's an endurance component. There's a mental component of going in over and over during the day, right? They've got to sort of step up to that too. Versus our practice, they may run once or twice. They're not going to be doing 1 or 2 runs at a tournament. When they're actually running, they're going to go in and race 4 to 6 times a day. So there's certainly a endurance component. And I try to really focus on, there's a fly buzzing around me. It's great.
Yeah.
Really focus on, is this dog stressed or happy in the ring? And how do we get the happy and not the stressed?
Right.
Because those dogs are going to be worried. They're going to not have as, a fluent a behavior performance if something's stressing them. So the more we can make them happy and this fun, the better they perform overall. So I'm always watching, what's their tail look like? Is their body language loose and happy?
Right. And so So I was going to ask you, like, I know you're running against a team on the other side.
Right.
Have you ever had any? I mean, I know you guys train it really hard. A
Mhm.
dog where maybe decides, I don't like that other dog over there for whatever reason.
It's pretty rare. Generally, teams don't want to put out a dog that they feel is a risk to other dogs.
Okay, that's nice to know.
Yeah, I mean, obviously they're animals. They're not always predictable.
Sure.
So you occasionally see stuff, but for the most part, it's a risk to your dog. It's a risk to other dogs. It's a risk to your teammates' dogs because, again, if you've already sent your dog and all of a sudden the dog ahead of it does something bizarre, they could collide. Like that could happen. So you want to make sure that you're putting dogs out there that are pretty safe. And
Yeah.
like I'm a regional director for NAFA, and one of the things we do is we'll talk to the owners, say, your dog's not ready. Or if there's an incident, they will get written up for dogs behaving badly, or, you seldom see like a true attack kind of situation in the ring. I've seen it happen, but this is 20 years of experience, maybe 2-3 times where I was like, oh, that is a dangerous dog. It should not be out here.
Okay.
So, some of it gets weeded out at a club level. Some of it, certainly dogs can do something unpredictable, but for the most part, it's not a huge issue in the sport. We do see stuff like the dog bobbled their ball. They missed their ball and they're chasing that ball into your lane. That's a far more common issue than dogs like going after each other.
Okay. Well, it makes total sense. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I was curious because that's, I've seen a few competitions, and yes, I've never seen anything happen. I've never seen the dogs want to leave or anything like that. It's been pretty, the ones that I've watched over the years have been very uneventful that way.
Right. And that's
thing.
why, it's pretty rare that you have a big issue like that. The judges are watching for that. As I'm sort of watching all of the things, but I would go talk to someone too if I'm like, you really don't have good control over your dog, or you might need some more training. Do you want some help or advice? But this dog doesn't seem ring ready. So
Right.
I haven't had to do that a whole lot, but
Right.
I will.
Yeah, absolutely.
And certainly the judges will too. So
Right. So
Do you think that part of that is like having a whole team, right? Like, no, you're not going out there.
yeah, and there is definitely that peer pressure, right? Like, we don't want you embarrassing our team.
Right. No, Carol, not yet. Right.
yeah.
Put Fifi away.
And I've had conversations with my own teammates, like, okay, we still have to work on this. I know you really, you want to run this dog, but we're not there yet. And, they trust that if I say I'm not comfortable putting your dog out there, that's because of something I'm seeing. Sometimes it's your dog. You're the handler. You're doing your job. You don't necessarily see, oh, the dog was like giving a hard eye to that other dog. Like, you may not see that. The box floater may see that and tell, me as like the team trainer, like, hey, they were really eyeballing that other dog. We should work on that. So, but on our team, everybody's pretty understanding about not putting dogs out that aren't quite ready. I have the difficult position as sort of the head trainer. Like, when I go to debut a dog, I have to trust everybody else to say, hey, yeah, nope, they're looking great. Let's do it. And I'm usually like, no, don't put them in. I'm not ready. Because part of it is just because I'm in that handler position. I'm not watching from the outside the whole thing.
Right.
I'm doing my job as the handler.
Right. Yeah, that can be pretty stressful. I'll be honest. I knew there was a lot involved in Flyball and training it and all that, but you guys really are like to the very, very detailed.
Very, very detailed.
Yeah, so it's good to see because it keeps. And I know in your neck of the woods there's a lot of Flyball. In our neck of the woods, not so much.
Yeah, there's basically like Henry, Illinois, there's still a tournament. certainly when I started, there was a lot of Chicago area teams and
Yes.
tournaments over that way. Some of it is just the sport sort of requires a longer area to practice in. So you need like 100 feet or so. My building that I built is 120 feet, and some people would be like, well, that's not enough distance. And it's like, well, find something else then. And certainly in some markets, it's hard to find a big space that you can rent affordably to practice even. You can certainly do tons of this stuff outside. You can do tons of this stuff in a smaller space, the foundation stuff. But if, when you're looking at the full ring is typically bare minimum, like 130 feet, 140 feet when you're competing. It's hard to find that kind of space anywhere else. And I know there's a bunch of stuff in Wisconsin, but there's also a lot of good facilities in Wisconsin, Milwaukee, Madison area that are longer and open to flyball. So I know there's a lot of teams up there, and some people that still participate in the Chicago area. If anybody is interested, I can get them in contact with people that are in that area. Some of it's such a large geographic area. Like you could be on, south side of Chicago, but they're practicing on the northeast side of Chicago. So, some of that's a limitation too.
Yeah. So where, do you have an email that I can type in and so people can maybe email you if they're interested in finding more information about in the area?
Right. So you can just do MC Jayne at yahoo.com.
Oh, that's easy.
Or you can look up like skid marks on Facebook with a Z, and all those emails and stuff come to our team, and people will get you in contact with
you. It's SKIDZ.
Skid, SKIDMARKZ.org is our website.
Yeah, and Janice made a nice comment, although I just want to put a little caveat to it. It looks like an awesome sport. The training's so detailed and nuanced, had no idea. That's why we asked Jayne on, right? I believe there are still some clubs, right, who are just fast and slam and get the ball and come back, right? Mm-hmm. Jayne is known Jayne for many, many years, and it's funny, right? She's very detailed in everything she does. She goes home and thinks about it before she falls asleep at night. And
yeah, I kind of eat, breathe, sleep flyball at this point. And our team is very dedicated. We're practicing twice a week. That's pretty uncommon. A lot of people are, once a week or every other week, maybe more normal in a lot of areas. We're obviously a little cuckoo for flyball puffs. And part of it is because we have a large team. Even though we have 2 practices, your dog gets maybe 2 turns at a practice. They're maybe working for 5 minutes.
Okay.
So, we're just kind of rolling through all the dogs. Pretty much every practice we'll be practicing our lineups and working with green dogs and puppies and their foundation. We lay that all out, and we have a schedule for our practices. Like it takes some time and dedication.
Do you live in Excel, Jayne?
A little bit. It's great for a detailed oriented person like myself. But a lot of teams, they're just getting together when they can and working more with the dogs they have. We're very organized. There's nothing wrong with either way, obviously. And people have great results with all of the training. Like anytime you're working and making dogs have fun and do recall work that's really heavily rewarded, it's a great experience for the dog, and it's pretty fun for the humans.
Yep. And I mean, I would just say, just like agility, just like a lot of the sports that are out there, when you have these really heavy impact sports, if you're thinking about starting and there's someone in your area, the first thing to talk to them about is safety, right? What are your safety measures? How do you protect the dogs? And really get to know what kind of things that they're doing. There's just a lot of sports like that, not just flyball, right? So
right.
And certainly in a lot of areas, there may be multiple teams. So you can go and find one that fits your schedule, your philosophy for your dog. obviously we're super competitive, but we also are excited about our slower dogs. Like if they perform well, that's fantastic. Got no problem with that. Other teams,
Right.
they're out there, they're going to get points, and they'll do their best, but they don't have the time and energy to put into this like I do. And they're still having a blast. Their dogs are still successful. So there's nothing wrong with that.
Can you have squeaky balls in the box?
You cannot have squeaky balls.
Okay,
in the
just
box.
checking.
Oh my God. My
You can
dogs
disable
are
the squeaker,
ridiculous.
but they can't actually squeak.
All right. Okay.
It's generally any ball that bounces and rolls and is considered safe. So like, you'll see chuck it balls, you'll see some racket balls, but they bounce a lot. So it's like, whoa, there it goes. And then foam balls and all sorts of things that are different, but you typically don't want it to squeak, or you're going to have like maybe all the dogs.
Yeah, no kidding. Well, the one that
Hey!
the one that was just squeaking here was my 13-year-old dog. We'll figure that out. The 13-year-old decided it's time to squeak the ball. So.
Time to annoy the handler and Mom, I'm bored.
Yes,
It's
she's
hungry
13. You would think she'd be taking a nap.
Yes.
Yeah,
Oh, all right. So clearly it's dinner time around the clock.
Yeah, I think the only other thing I'd say is, this is one of the few sports that it's so highly rewarded for the dog. I just see dogs so happy in it. And a lot of times you just see humans more happy because their dog did it. They have so many opportunities during the day to do it successfully.
Yeah.
And you're rewarding them each time. So you're kind of having like this nice feedback loop of like, I love you. You did it for me. Here's a reward. You're so great. Let's line up again and do it again. Like, I really like that aspect of it.
It's reinforcing for both the dogs and the people.
And then certainly people, my flyball team is like my second family. Like we do stuff together outside of flyball. We have a bunch of us have kids and they all play together. And you can also have junior handlers in flyball too, but it's just kind of a bit more relaxed and casual than some sports you go to and it's like, oh, so serious.
Yeah, tell me about it.
Yeah. So there is really a large focus on fun. And there's almost like a tailgating atmosphere at tournaments. So you're spending all day with friends and family and people who love dogs. So it's pretty cool that way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Jayne,
we definitely have some team members here in the comments saying making those kids. So
yeah. So Jayne, thank you so much for this was so awesome and so educational. Even and I've been to a few, but how you guys break it, it's just awesome and just so I really appreciate. This was great. Just wonderful. It was awesome.
Yeah,
Thank
and
you.
certainly if people have questions or want to get involved in the sport, email me. I will look wherever you're at to try to find people that play the sport that you can go try it out with.
We might even make an Excel spreadsheet to share.
I would not do that because I need to find the info without a spreadsheet. But
yeah, I have a couple of students that would love you. They're spreadsheet queens. So yes, I'm with you.
That's great. Thanks a bunch, Jayne. We really enjoyed having you and sharing your sport with
Thank
everyone.
you so much. Thank you everyone for tuning in.
Yeah. Thanks everybody.
Bye-bye.